off. So here we are. Welcome, welcome. We are bringing the warm-up back. So we have our specialists from Sugarfoot Therapy. We have Katie Kutry and Nick Kutry. And I'm gonna read the blurb because I think it's perfect that we have on sugarfoottherapy.com. Sugarfoot Therapy is a revolutionary injury prevention conditioning program created by Doctor of Physical Therapy Nicholas Kutry and professional dancer choreographer Katie Schaar. Used by dancers and dance educators worldwide, Sugarfoot Therapy brings the exercises of sports physical therapy to dancers. Dancers, how much do we need that? When practiced regularly, these exercises are scientifically proven to help reduce injury risk. So again, welcome Dr. Nick Kutry and Katie Schaar of Sugarfoot Therapy. I'm so excited. My words are pot-a-baraying into each other. We also have special guests to help us kick this off, Chuck Maldonado and Sienna Lyons. Oh my goodness. Known for their choreography, teaching, dance. I mean, just industry vets who I adore. You know this. So let's start. I wanted to give a little bit of I don't even know if this is icebreaker question because we're just diving on in. Chuck, I have a question for you. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready now.
Okay, cool. What changes have you noticed over the last decades in the dance world around warm-ups? Are people doing more? Are they doing less? Do you feel like we could learn from previous generations or the other way around?
Yeah, what I've experienced is less. It was almost mandatory. It was a must for us to warm up the classes. When I got to LA in 2001, everybody was warming up people. And even if the choreographer didn't do it, they had their assistants do it. Now they just turn on the music and it's okay, you warm yourselves up. And as soon as, the next 2-3 minutes after one or two songs, then we're going to start learning choreography, which I found out to be really weird. So I'm going to say that the new generation can learn from the old school choreographers and dancers from the past.
I love it. And then Chuck, which studio are you coming from today?
I'm in my studio here, Fusion Force LA in North Hollywood.
That's so awesome. Everybody be sure to follow Fusion Force LA. That was a pointed question because yeah, it's such a dope studio. And one more thing, as a studio owner, Chuck, what do you feel? I feel like it could be awkward sometimes, like when I've taken class and there's just no warm-up. I sometimes feel like I don't want to step on the toes of the teacher. Sometimes at the studio, I'm afraid that I'm going to I've heard people and for myself being afraid to look bad. Do you have any recommendations for how to communicate with studios when you're walking into class and you're not being warmed up?
If the teacher's not warming up the class and not even their assistants are, and they're not even putting on music for you to warm up yourself, definitely come to the studio owner. I would definitely love to hear that from my the people that are taking classes here at the studio. That way I can confront the teachers and I can let them know that we're going to have to do some kind of warm up because it's important. I know if someone gets hurt in my studio, that can cost me money too. So it's a liability. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Thank you. And then, oh my God, and quick shameless plug, y'all. Oh my God, I didn't even intro myself. Wait a second. By the way, everyone, my name is Galit Friedländer. That's how hyped I am right now. I'm a dancer forever. I'm also a certified personal trainer, and I'm the creator and host of the DanceSpeakPodcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play Music. And I actually have had Chuck and Sienna as guests on their own episode, so check that out. So by the way, I'm Galit. I'm not a random person that overtook the Zoom. But on to you, Sienna. What do you feel should be the bare minimum base knowledge that dance teachers should have in order to lead a successful warm-up?
Well, I definitely think the core needs to be activated. That is a big one. That's where your balance stems from, your fastness, your slowness, your texture. It's a lot of where it stems from. So engaging the core, getting the core fired up, getting the hips fired up. Me personally, I've dealt with a lot of hip injuries that actually Nick has cured or helped me deal with on a day-to-day basis. He was one of the only physical therapists to actually pinpoint for me what it was. I had torn my labrum. I had gone to 3 physical therapists prior to him, and they told me it was a groin issue, and it wasn't. It's my labrum. So he helped me with that a lot. So I'm very focused in the hips now, especially that he had brought that to my attention. I've definitely learned warm up and exercises from him that I still do every day. So hips are really important to me. Glutes are super important. And then for me, like back, a little bit of lat strength, just to figure out where you can find your power and your cleanliness for your lines. Those are kind of what I like to focus on in my warm up. And I find that to be somewhat successful there.
That's awesome. And Sienna, one more question before we start with Katie and Nick. As someone also who's been teaching for years, I mean, you and Chuck have been teaching for years, is there anything that you look to do towards to kind of further yourself when you're taking care of dancer bodies, or what do you do? What's your view on that? In expanding your knowledge, or?
Oh yeah, I'm always expanding my knowledge and watching videos, reading books on it, trying it myself. That's a major thing for me, is like I have to make sure I can do it properly in order to teach it properly. So I have to make sure I can do it. I like to try different styles of workouts, whether it be like Pilates or yoga, even just physical therapy workouts and warm-ups and things like that. So I try to just continuously broaden and make my knowledge with the human body, myself, and even in a dance way. Like, what do I think about when I'm dancing? How can I make it look like this? So, as a teacher, a lot of people come to us now because they want to dance somewhat how we do. So I have to look inward to myself and be like, okay, how do I do that? Why do I do it like that? So just really figuring out like the nitty gritty detail is what helps me, I think, further along, not only teaching to my students, but just making me better as my own artist and dancer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And for both of you, why was it important for both of you to be part of the 10-minute warm-up video, which we're going to refer to during this time? Why was it important? We can start with Chuck and then Sienna. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was important because, especially now that I own a studio, I would like for my teachers to have a reference if they don't know how to warm up. I think a lot of teachers, is really weird because a lot of dancers, choreographers, and instructors don't know how to warm up their classes. Hence the reason why they don't do it. I think and most of the people that do it is because they're more technically trained and they have a background in jazz and ballet and modern and so on. So, and like myself, I do too. So that's why, all my warm-ups is very, it's all here, everything. But yeah, so, that's the reason. So for me, it was important because I wanted to educate more people about it.
That's awesome.
I was really honored to be asked to be in this video as well, because again, MOTI in general, they always have so much knowledge and I just eat it all up. So I was super excited to learn some more stuff from Katie, which was awesome. And for me, I find that I'm also from a very old school, like I grew up in a studio since I was 2, very technical. We didn't move until we warmed up our body for at least 30 to 45 minutes. Like that's how my studio was. And then we would maybe dance for an hour. Like it was more just about, okay, let's make sure your body is correct, your placement is correct. And then once that feels strong and you're mobile and stable in that sense, then we can start adding movement into that. That was what our weekly classes were for. And then our weekend classes were for company, where we would obviously dance and learn numbers and stuff. So for me, it's always been something that I do. I can honestly say, if you talk to anybody that takes my class, they say my warm-up kicks their ass. They think it's done right then. So I'm known for that. So for me, I was really excited because I wanted to learn how to hit all the main pinpoints in the body in a quick time frame. So for me, an hour and 20-minute class isn't that long, especially when I'm doing a 15 to 20-minute warm-up in my class. So I was like, okay, this is awesome. Let's shave off 10 minutes of that. So now I have more time to, share knowledge, get some more information out, and then give the class a little more time to let that absorb into their brain, give them more time to do it in groups and all of that. So that's why I was so honored to be asked, many reasons.
I love it. And what I want to highlight to everyone listening is notice Chuck and Sienna are excellent at what they do and always on the up and up, right? Chuck owning his studio and all of his film and TV credits and work, and Sienna and all of her work just ongoing up and up. And both of them have the mentality of always learning and growing. Like right here, they're talking about it. So I wonder sometimes if there's an idea like you're already baked after you've learned all of your dance everything, but it's not. In every field, you know, doctors, they're always reading the latest articles, the latest data. They're always upping their game. Athletes, they always know the latest cutting edge body care technology techniques. So dancers and dance teachers especially, why shouldn't it be the same for us? So now on to Katie and Nick. Can I ask you one question before you start your beautiful presentation? What do you feel is like a wonderful, a top way to work around when you have a dance teacher who does not have a technical background or does not have a traditional background? So they know like a certain dance form like better than anyone, but they might not know how to prepare bodies. What do you recommend for them in their classes?
Well, I think that was what we put together in our 10-minute warm-up was meant to be a pretty like universal and approachable sequence of exercises. And what as a dancer and choreographer, what I really wanted to communicate is that it's important that the warm-up belongs in your class. So we'll talk about all the benefits for reducing injury risk and improving performance, but like it really sets the tone for your class. And like the warm-up we put together with 3 songs for this video, like I had like a commercial jazz funk, like LA type class in mind, because I know that scene, I know the vibe and the atmosphere, and I know like this would feel really good. Like, yes, we were doing stretches and muscle activation, but like we were also finding a groove. And like, so for whatever teacher, whatever your specialty is, don't lose that. You can bring that into your warm-up, and it should always be personalized, and it should feel like it belongs in your class. We're just here to share kind of like the meat and potatoes, the really critical exercises and muscle activation techniques that you can use, and then you can kind of sprinkle your sauce on it or play the music that fits in your world, because it shouldn't feel like a separate thing. You should identify with it.
And I think I think you touched on it earlier where it's like, you know, doctors, athletes, everybody's kind of always looking for this next progression of their skill set, right? And I think the dance world does that as far as dance technique is concerned, but I think the viewpoint needs to change a little bit in understanding that this is a part of dance technique and dance training. This needs to be a part of that. And just like you would seek out resources, new teachers to learn from, new technique to soak in, this needs to be considered just new technique, right? So this is a way, this is an integral way that you cannot separate this out. It would be like asking a professional soccer player, professional football player to not train off the field, right? We've seen injury rates dramatically decrease because of those things. So finding those resources, like the stuff that we've created, like so many other, you know, great clinicians are coming out with now, changing your mindset to say, I need to be seeking out those resources to better my dance training, not just new ways of technique and things like that. So,
and even more classically trained dancers and dance teachers, we all know, like, this is how I always warmed up in my studio, and we do this 30-minute warm up. But even those of us who grew up in that world and do know how to warm up, like, we can shift how we change up, how we warm up, so it's even better and more effective.
In our world, it changes. I mean, it changes constantly. I mean, new research is coming out, I mean, literally every month. And new stuff is being published every week, and it's published in the big journals every month. I mean, there are things that I was doing 2 years ago that I don't do now. So, you know, it's imperative that we have this mindset of constantly growing, and that we need to constantly be learning and shifting what we're doing.
Nick, quick question. Is it okay if I call you Nick, or do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, right. Very good. Do you have any recommendations of journals or anything that dancers might have access to that could keep our knowledge up to date?
The Dance PT journal, the exact
Well, the
name
best way to access all the dance journals is by joining IADAMS. That organization, I feel like the yearly membership for dancers or dance educators, it's not a lot. It's 100, maybe 125 bucks, and you have access to all the articles published. So IADMS, IADAMS. And then there are some other great books out there. There's one called Dancing Longer, Dancing Stronger that some dance medicine professionals down at Chapman published. But accessing that IADAMS community is a really awesome way, and you'll get kind of regular emails with just like, hey, check this out. So that's a really awesome way to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on there.
Perfect. Thank you. So this presentation I've been hearing about.
Yeah. So, you know, we're here today because we put out this exciting warm-up video. And as I said, we wanted to offer just a really practical solution for this LA scene. And this is more about the dilemma of like, how do I work a warm-up in when time is pressing and I got to get through my choreo and film at the end of class. But even if you're not in the LA commercial scene, we can all relate to that need to make the most of your time and to also provide an effective warm-up. So wherever you're from, whatever your genre, you can get a lot out of this today. And so we're gonna focus in on a few specific exercises from that specific warm-up and talk about why we did them. But before we do that, we just want to give you guys like a short background on why warming up is important and kind of the key things to consider when you're putting a warm-up together. Okay, so I am going to screen share. Okay, can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, like I just said, we're gonna talk about why we need to warm up, best practices for dance warm-ups, and then we're gonna break down some of those specific exercises from the video. So why is it important to warm up? There's two big reasons: to reduce your risk for injury and to perform better. So you're less likely to get hurt, and you're probably gonna dance a lot better if you warm up. So reduces injury risk. When you warm up, it literally warms your body up. It increases your body's temperature, which means your tissue is more pliable, okay? Like Nick always likes to use the example of chewing gum. Think about like a cold piece of chewing gum, like if you're in cold weather and you bite into it and it's like hard, okay? That's like your muscles without a warm-up. If you're in a hot climate and you bite into that chewing gum and it's soft and pliable. So when you think about your tissue's ability to absorb force and impact, that softer, more pliable, warm tissue, it's gonna be much less jarring and much less injury prone. Another big reason that it reduces injury risk is because it literally turns on all of the muscles that are going to protect your joints. Okay, so we often think about our muscles generating movement, but we also want to think about them decelerating and stopping movement with control. Okay, so when we turn on these muscles, they're better able to stabilize and protect our joints so that the force of our movements don't go into the joint, they go into the muscle, okay? Other big reason to warm up is it improves performance. So back to that warm, pliable tissue, that warm, stretchy gum, it stretches more. You're more flexible. You can move bigger. With dance, you're going to hit the better lines when your tissue are warm, okay? Also, when you warm up, it increases your heart rate and your aerobic capacity. So you're going to be able to sustain more energy throughout the rest of the class, okay? And then going back to our turned on muscles, yes, they're going to stabilize and protect our joints, but they're also just going to function better. So when these muscles are turned on, they're going to be more precise in executing that movement. They're going to be able to execute more nuanced movement quality, So when we're talking about like the level of artistry we're hoping to accomplish in the class or rehearsal or performance, it's all going to go better if you've warmed up effectively. All right. So now let's talk about the key components of an effective warm-up, okay? Number one, it should be dynamic. That means it should be moving. So kind of an old school thing is that when we warm up, we kind of like hold positions for a while, or like sit in the splits for a few counts of 8. That's something that really isn't recommended anymore. Your warm-up should be moving the whole time. Besides being more effective, there are actually some real cons to those static stretching practices. Static stretching has actually shown to decrease that muscle activation and decrease the muscle strength and power. And it can take, I think, up to an hour sometimes for those muscles to recover their ability to fire.
Can I ask a quick question on that, actually? So if you, so when you're, first of all, I want to delineate for people the difference between warming up and stretching, because sometimes I think they get collapsed. For classes where you do need to have a certain amount of flexibility, do you recommend still stretching after the warm-up before dancing, or are you suggesting not to? Okay, cool.
I would suggest probably putting the stretch portion towards the end of the class. That's kind of more of their cool down, where you're not going to be taking them and putting them through a bunch of plyometric movement that is usually involved in dance classes. So like Katie talked about, there's a decrease in the firing speed of muscles after they've been stretched for a long period of time. And we want that to be optimized at that point. If you have somebody that's used to being able to achieve for instance, like a split or something like that, them going and working through a static split is not going to help improve their split for dancing. It actually makes their split probably a little bit more dangerous. So if you have them work through an active range of motion involving that hip range of motion, you're not only kind of flossing that neural activation, but you're also increasing the blood flow to the joint, you're increasing the blood flow to the muscles, you're warming it up, you're warming the tissue up, and you're also teaching control through that range of motion. So you don't want to just be sitting in something that's actually cooling things down as opposed to warming it up.
Wow, mind is blown, because I think of like jazz the whole way I grew up. Like we'd sit in stretches before we were doing across the floor. Wow, okay.
And now, mind you, so actually the next point on here, in your warm-up, you should move through the ranges you'll need when dancing. So if in this jazz class, you're going to be doing batmas that kick your face, before you do that first batma to the head, you should take your hips through that range in the warm-up, but not by sitting in a static split. So in this warm-up video, we didn't do any exercises that like did an active movement through a full split, because it wasn't really relevant to like a jazz, funk, hip hop type class. But there are ways you can do that. Does that answer your question?
It does. It also blows my mind.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And you'll actually find you'll probably make better flexibility gains if you save that static stretching for the end of class.
Awesome.
Okay, so next up, your warm-up should be activity specific. So it should be catered to your dance genre and even to what skills you'll be working on in that particular rehearsal or class. So kind of what we just said, like it should fit your vibe. It should fit into what you're gonna do. It should set the tone for your class. If they need to be feeling funky, like make them feel funky. If they need to be feeling more like controlled and pulled up, like it should have that feeling. And then if there are specific skills that you're going to be executing in the rehearsal or class, you want to strategically prepare for those skills. So like a hip hop warm up might have more like fast kind of footwork in the warm up. For a jazz class, you might have some active stretching moving through those full split ranges. So it definitely should be catered to what you're gonna do. So we're definitely not saying that this 10-minute warm-up is like the universal dance warm-up, that's the only thing everyone should do. No, it's an example of a good warm-up, okay? Point number 4 here, it should be 3-dimensional, okay? So a big thing we focus on with our Sugarfoot therapy program is moving in all 3 planes of motion. So we're all used to like doing forward lunges, okay? We're all used to just like doing a basic squat, but movement is not that linear and 1-dimensional. Movement is 3-dimensional, okay? And obviously dancing is. So anytime we move, and in our warm-up, we need to prepare our body for that 3-dimensional movement. So you'll see like, we're not just gonna lunge forward, we're gonna lunge forward, we're gonna lunge to the side, we're gonna lunge with rotation, so that we're really turning on all these muscles to function with those different movement directions. And a good way to think about this, about how our bodies are designed for 3D movement, is most of our muscle fibers don't just go like straight from point A to point B. Like usually there's the insertion point and the muscle fibers fan out. So like even when you're thinking about stretching, if you're just stretching your hamstrings in one direction, it's not complete because you're not getting all those other fibers that fan out and around. So just thinking back to the anatomy and how we're supposed to move.
And when you think about linear motions, like Katie brought up the point of just like a forward lunge. When you go through a forward lunge or you go through a jump and a landing, you think of like, if you just jump straight up in the air, you think of that as just a straight up and down motion. Most people would say, oh, the hip is flexing. Well, the hip is actually rotating. It's actually going through side to side motion all at the same time, just to make that one jump happen, or just to make that one lunge happen. The things that are going on at the ankle is actually side bending, it's rotating, it's doing all this stuff to tell all the other bones what to do. And so if we're not practicing motion that is bigger through these other ranges of motion, so teaching the hip how to externally rotate or internally rotate and through a fuller range of motion, then when it has to do these smaller ones that are maybe more plyometric in nature, then it's not quite prepared well enough to do those. And so making sure that we're incorporating all of those 3 dimensions is very important.
Okay.
Awesome.
And then the last thing here, your warm-up should be performed within 15 minutes of dancing so that the heart rate is still up and your body is ready to move. So this, usually in a class setting, that's not a problem, but like maybe in a rehearsal, maybe like lead a big group warm-up and then send like group A to sit down for an hour until you get to their section. Well, group A is not really gonna be warmed up and ready to move when it gets to their part. So just knowing as a teacher and to inform your dancers, like that warm-up should happen no more than 15 minutes before it's time to go, okay? We're not focusing on cool downs today, but we just wanted to bring it up because they are important. So just a quick note here. Cool downs do not have to be long, but they're really valuable. So they're kind of like the warm up in reverse. If the warm up is our ramp up, the cool down is our ramp down. Okay, so they're gonna progressively return the body's metabolic rate to rest. Okay, they're gonna help decrease levels of fatigue, neural activity levels, and soreness. Okay, and then when we think about the structure of a cool down, thinking about it kind of like that warm up in reverse. So as the warm up ramps up, cool down, ramping down. So you could literally take what you do for a warm up a lot of time and kind of just like reverse it. But by the end of your cool down, your breath should be slowed down. Your heart rate should be slowed down. Okay, you should feel calmer as you go out into the world. We shouldn't go from like, this 10 out of 10 high of dancing just about our everyday lives. And then again, at the end of class, this is the time to practice static stretching if you are working to increase flexibility. But even still, even if you static stretch at this point when you're supposed to, you should still follow up the static stretching with some neuromuscular activation, okay? So we still don't recommend sitting in the splits for a minute and just leaving it at that, okay? Once those muscles are stretched out to that position, they need to be able to activate and contract. So anything you want to add about that?
No,
Can I ask a quick question?
I could go down a rabbit hole on that.
I know, and that's not the focus of this chat. So,
I know.
But yes.
Oh, I just gotta ask. I know. I just gotta ask though. What do you feel like what's the max amount of seconds you should spend in a static stretch if you are increasing your flexibility?
So I wouldn't go probably over a minute, but within that minute, what I would say is you're not just statically sitting there. You're actually working, kind of doing some micro work within, I wouldn't even actually call it micro work because it might be some of the hardest mobility work that you'll ever do in your life. But working, the way I like to describe it is like kind of into and out of that range of motion. So imagine somebody in like a forward split, right? And so front leg is straight out front. And so what you're working on, and back leg is straight out back, what you're working on is like trying to kind of lift yourself up off the floor like that. So the thigh muscles aren't just sitting in that range of motion. They're actually working in that range of motion, and they're teaching it how to control. And then from that position, where you will go is try to lift both legs off of the floor and kind of doing reversals like that, where you'll hold 5 to 10 seconds in each position. And then that is your split stretch, right? So it's not just holding, it's teaching, okay, I can go here. Now let me teach these muscles that control that how to activate within this range of motion. So both it's safer, but also the brain feels it's safer. And so you'll actually gain range of motion much faster. If you're limited in those ranges, you'll gain range of motion much faster. So there's that added benefit is everybody wants to know, like, how do I work on my splits, or how do I get this better? And it's like, work within the range of motion that you have, teach your brain that it's safe to be there, and it will actually work much better and give you gains much faster.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So before we get into the exercise breakdown, this was kind of like a big topic with this video we did. The question, is a longer warm-up better? Not necessarily, because really, if you're focusing on all of those key components where you're moving the whole time, you're moving through those ranges you need, you're not wasting time on static stretches, you usually can hit it all in like 10 to 15 minutes. And maybe like the warm-up section of your class is 30 minutes long, and then you spend an hour on choreography. But probably if the warm-up section of your class is 30 minutes long, you're not actually warming up for that entire 30 minutes. It should probably only take about 10 minutes to get the good warm-up in. And then maybe you're working on more like specific technique focuses or certain style focuses before you get into choreography. But at that point, it's not technically the warm-up. And so then to that point, teachers, something to be aware of is the risk for repetitive stress injuries. So if you're going to be doing the example I gave, if your combo has a bunch of petit allegro in it, either in a ballet, modern, or jazz class, if there's a bunch of like petit allegro style jumping in the choreography and you're going to be doing that for an hour, traditionally, I might think, oh, I need to do a bunch of petit allegro in my warm-up or in the technique portion of class so they're ready for it. But that might not be the best idea because it might be overkill. So there are other like cross-training exercises you can do to prepare the body for that quick jumping and shock absorption and controlled deceleration without drilling those same high impact movements over and over again. that makes sense. Okay. All right, so now we are going to just take a little peek into our 10-minute warm-up we did with Doctors for Dancers. So what you're gonna see here is that this is activity specific. It was designed for these particular styles of dance, kind of hip hop, jazz, funk, but it wouldn't be appropriate for every hip hop class. Just kind of that was the vibe we were going for. Teachers, having a set choreographed warm-up is an awesome way for you to get the most out of your classes and the most for your team. That way, you know, you don't have to spend time prepping a warm-up every time. It's set, okay? Your dancers know it. And you know, if you teach drop-in classes, you could still have a set warm-up. It might just be a little bit slower or a little bit more repetitive so that the drop-in people have the chance to pick it up. But having that set warm-up is really effective and a very efficient way to use your time. And then maybe, because we do want to address specific skills that are going to be done, maybe you don't usually kick your head in your class, but you're going to today. So you might just add in, you might spend an extra minute moving through that range of motion if it's not part of your regular set warm-up. So it can be adaptable, but that's just a really great way to kind of like kick off your season and lock it down. All right, so now let's just take a select number of these exercises, and we're going to talk about why we did them and kind of important things to know when you are practicing them. So we're going to watch a little video clip here of this dynamic hip flexor stretch.
Left foot forward, come into your little split squat. Now we're going to go top, release, top, release. 3. Now hold the top, and we do our little groove. Make sure it's so squeezing your feet, maintaining that on the top. Good, now change sides. Top, top, top. Now really hold that squeeze and the groove. Yep. Yep.
Now, okay, so what we were focusing on here is finding an active pelvic tuck to make sure that the hip flexors are actually getting lengthened. So I repeated that pelvic tuck a few times to make sure everybody was finding that tuck, squeezing their glutes. And then when we hold that tuck, so the hip flexors are lengthened, then we add dynamic movement. So while the muscle is lengthened, now I'm adding movement in all 3 planes of motion, so I'm getting more of that 3D stretch of those muscle fibers, okay? The other reason this dynamic stretch is beneficial is right away, it's getting my dynamic balance turned on, okay? So this would be a good alternative for kind of like that classic runner's lunge stretch, where like one hand's on the floor, one foot's forward and the other leg is stretched back. But your weight's kind of all on that front hand. And like, yeah, maybe your hip flexor's a little bit lengthened, but not really if you're not actively tucking your pelvis. And with that, you're not moving. So you're not getting any of that benefit of turning on your balance system. Anything you want to say about that one?
Yeah, and also in this position, you're teaching the hips how to function together in 2 very different positions. One hip is fully flexed, one hip is lengthened into extension. So teaching the hip flexor and the glute on opposite sides how to function together. The adductors in very different positions, how to function together. And the importance of driving motion from the top down to teach the body how to stabilize, but it's a very authentic way of moving for any athlete, really. So to be in that kind of split stance position and then driving motion from the top down is a great way to both lengthen in all 3 planes of motion, but also teach stability in all 3 planes of motion all at the same time. So you're getting like a really great bang for your buck.
Cool. Next one we're gonna look at here is this single leg squat with 3-way reach. Okay, so let's watch the clip.
Get on the left foot. Here we go. 1, good stop. Pick it up. Go up, side, and up. Good. Side, and up, left foot. Right, side, other side. Good. Really sit into the squat. Reach the back.
Okay, so you're kind of holding that single leg squat position and reaching the other foot forward, side, and then rotating. Okay, so these are those 3 planes of motion. We're moving front to back, we're moving side to side, and we're moving with rotation. With this exercise, when you practice it, you'll feel some really good glute burn, and you'll probably feel some good burn in like your foot and lower leg muscles. Okay, so those hip stabilizers and those ankle stabilizers are all getting turned on here. And then with this, we like to think about the knee kind of being like in between the hip and the foot. And a lot of times the knee kind of gets wrung out like a towel in between the hip and the knee. And so this exercise, holding that squat position, is a great way to focus on knee alignment and stabilizing where the knee goes. So as my one foot is reaching to those 3 points, I'm keeping my attention on my supporting knee to try and keep it as stable as possible. Okay, and it's especially challenging when I twist and do that rotational reach to not let my knee rotate with me. So you hear me cueing the dancers, keep that supporting knee pointing straight ahead the whole time. Don't let it twist with you. So this is a good way to just activate those stabilizing muscles and just bring some mindfulness to control of the knee.
I mean, great explanation, but it gets in, and thinking about the knee is kind of stuck between, you know, a rock and a hard place. The knee kind of gets told what to do based on what the hip does and what the foot and ankle do. And the foot and ankle are really kind of what tell everything what to do when the foot hits the ground. A foot off the ground, and then when a foot hits the ground, everything changes. And so it's important that the foot and ankle and the hip talk. So I love this as part of a warm-up progression, because you're kind of putting the hip in a static position, somewhat the ankle in a static position, and then you're using drivers to kind of, you know, you don't have too many moving parts here. And so you're really getting the foot and ankle and the hip.
Can I go live going sideways? No.
Oh, can everyone, sorry, everyone make sure that you're muted if you need to be muted.
Turn it off.
So yeah, it just basically getting the foot and ankle and the hip to talk a lot and teach it how to stabilize the knee is very, very important.
And I'm seeing a question here that I love. Natasha asks, what would you say is a good rule of thumb for how many reps to do for each exercise?
A lot of it is kind of time-based, you know, what you've got, and you know, in a warm-up, you know, a set of 10 is pretty good, because you're going to be doing other things. And so introducing these motions. So maybe if you're going through rounds of 3 of these, you know, of 3 different directions, you do like a couple rounds of 5, or if you've got a little bit more time, a couple rounds of 10. You're not trying to knock it out of the park here, right? You know, so it's, you're not trying to burn them out. You're trying to get a bit of a burn so they really feel it, but you're not trying to wear them out. So, and understand too that as they get used to these warm-ups, as you institute kind of a standard warm-up procedure or program, that they will get a little bit more used to it. They'll be able to get through it a little bit quicker. And so you can start with a smaller number of reps and then increase as your dancers get better at it.
Good. All right. Next up, 3-way skaters. Okay, so remember we talked about our muscles needing to act like brakes on a car. So not only do they generate movement, they need to bring us to a controlled stop. Okay, so this is going to get those muscles firing in that way but without the full impact of jumping. Okay, so it's more of a weight transfer that, and not quite a jump. So we'll watch the clip.
That's the best in America. Don't make me have to embarrass you. Mold me, she like a marathon. Just let me down on the way home. Coming to Joe ain't never been wrong. I know you ain't put me in the friend zone. Like does that I'm in the end zone. Bust down on the red stone. Late in the midnight hour, you made the worst decisions. I was playing my position. Late in the midnight hour, you made the worst decisions. I was always there to listen.
Yeah. Okay, so again, triplanar. We did this skating movement forward and back, side to side, and with rotation, okay? And we do this moving slowly. We're working on really controlling that stop, finding our balance on the single leg weight transfer. This exercise can be quite humbling. It's really quite simple compared to what we do as dancers. But when you slow down and really try to stop that movement and stick that landing, it might be harder than you would expect. And so slowing it down can sometimes show us maybe how not stable we are when we're moving faster, and it's kind of disguised by the speed of the movement. So this is a great way to just, again, like get those stabilizing muscles firing so that when we do start to move faster, they're more ready to go in that capacity.
Perfect.
Great. And again, back to that point that we talked about, other benefit is you're going to dance better. Okay. So by taking this time and doing it slowly, so much about like separating great dancers from good dancers is that nuance, that fine tuning, that control. Can they stop on a dime? Okay. So doing something like this in the warm up is going to better set you up to have that precision and control.
Great. And then Haley, Haley Stone has a question that I love. Do you recommend instructing without the beat first and then guiding them into it, or just cueing it over the rhythm and going into the rhythm?
Typically, yes. I usually like to teach it like really, I like to have the time to break down and make sure they understand the execution of it.
Yeah.
Again, we were thinking of like class at the Millennium with 150 people, and like, you might not have time to do that, but it's still better to do it over the beat. But ideally, yeah, I would break it down without the music first.
Awesome.
Okay, last one we're going to look at is this dynamic plank sequence. So let's watch the clip.
Slow these down and hips back. If you want to try one leg, you can. Go from the couch to the kitchen, you know what my body's missing. I don't know how you let you do. Now come out to your plank, and we go mountain climbers. 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Go to the floor away. Now go right leg, left leg, right, left. Airplane push-up. Breathe. All right. Well, okay. So more typically in a dance warm-up, you might be used to like either isometric holds of planks or core work that's more like doing crunches. So we like to do, I mean, the plank position is important for getting your shoulder stabilizers working. But even in terms of core work, it's typically more functional than just like laying it down on the floor and doing crunches or holding a static plank. It's moving. It's more like dance. And again, we're not just doing the same repetitive motion. We're incorporating that 3D movement.
And when you think about kind of the different lines of pulls for the muscle chains and the fascial lines in the body, and you think about just holding a static plank, for instance, and then you look at a plank sequence somewhat like this, where you're really driving things from the bottom up, driving things from the top down. You are spending time a lot of times on one leg. So, you know, that the oblique lines, the kind of cross lines, the forward lines that run straight, the anterior lines that run straight down the body, they're all getting kind of twisted up. They're all working together. So all of that, all of those proprioceptors, all those little nerve endings that are telling our body which muscles need to fire and how, those are all kind of working together at that point. We're not just like statically holding something.
That's awesome. And is this something that you'd recommend for people to integrate into their strength training sequences, or to just keep it to warm up?
Absolutely. Definitely integrate any of this stuff into your strength training sequences.
Probably with higher sets and reps.
Yeah, higher sets and reps,
Yeah.
higher resistance from different angles, things like that. So like with the single leg balance reaches, you can incorporate some resistance pulling in to the inside of the knee. So you can wrap a resistance band around the knee. You can pull it from the inside, pull from the outside to help you incorporate different muscles. Just having resistance bands like underneath your foot, like pulling you down, or dumbbells or jugs of water, things like that. It's very important to incorporate three-dimensional motion and load three-dimensional motion in your strength training. We don't do anything in life or athletics that is not three-dimensional. Even walking is highly three-dimensional when you break it down, even though it's just taking you from one point A to point B in a straight line. What's going on at the joints is very, very three-dimensional. So not just, and I get this question a lot from athletes that are, you know, very experienced in traditional strength and conditioning methods of, you know, squatting and things like that. Can I load this? Absolutely, you can load it. You may not be able to load it as much, but that should tell you something that you need to build a lot of control.
Perfect. Does any of this change when working with kids?
A little bit, but I mean, think about what you're asking your youth dancers to do. You know, what we're asking those kids to put their bodies through is, I mean, it's really hectic.
I mean, even as simple, like a young competition kid doing like a contemporary piece where they're in like a single arm plank and reaching. I mean, this plank sequence is in no way more difficult than that action. But we're repeating it, we're building strength. So, you know, really they should, if they can't do this stuff in this warm up, they're probably not in control of the bigger skills they're doing as dancers.
Kids' bodies are extremely naturally flexible. The joints aren't fully formed yet. The bones aren't fully formed yet. There is a much higher degree of tissue elasticity and a lot less strength than what they're capable of moving through. And so it's extremely important for us to train them to explore these different angles. You know, I'm not going to load up a 8-year-old dancer like I would a, you know, 22-year-old professional dancer. Because that might not be as appropriate, but am I going to give them some load? Absolutely. Am I going to give them some external resistance? Absolutely. Because what we're asking them to do on stage it requires it. We're doing them a disservice by not doing that.
Thank you. And it kind of brings me to another point as I'm visualizing all of this happening and the demands of dance. Sometimes I've walked into training programs and they'll have like really intense warm-ups, stretch, and then like a lot of conditioning before the choreo to prepare the mind for and the demands for those long 8-hour plus days. Is there a benefit to that, to like getting people ready for those burnout feeling days, or at what point is it overkill?
It's there. So that's a really interesting question.
Are you talking about like an 8-hour day that starts with an hour of warm up and hardcore conditioning?
Great. Thank you for asking. So keeping this to sometimes the warm up, right? It also has strengtheners.
Yes.
And I've seen sometimes a program that might have, let's say, like a 4-hour training day. They'll start off with an hour of that warm up, going into cardio, going into conditioning, where dancers are like, you know, and then they go into the dance. Is that overkill? Is there a place for it? It's so hard to answer?
It is. It's a hard question to answer without kind of seeing the programming. It definitely can be, because if you're taking them through strenuous strength conditioning, and then, you know, without break or, you know, without anything, kind of letting their bodies cool down a little bit, or just recover, not cool down, but recover a little bit, with something less intense, then, you know, you could be definitely asking for more injuries that way, because you're decreasing with fatigue, you're decreasing the amount of control that they have, which is counterintuitive to what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to increase the amount of control that they have. So something with some strengtheners, but I probably wouldn't put them through a full hour of strength and conditioning before they go and do 3 to 4 hours of intense choreography and, you know, intense technical training. You might save that, you know, you might try to break that up into 2 sessions, you know, giving them a lot less wear down, a lot less fatigue before they go into these intensive technical days. You know, I don't want to say don't do anything, because, you know, it's important, and good on them for like trying to incorporate this stuff. And that is where, you know, consulting with a professional, a certified athletic trainer, DPT, you know, a good strength coach that has a background in dance, that is, you know, really experienced in putting together periodized, you know, strengthening schedules for these types of athletes. This is a different type of sport than most professionals deal with, because oftentimes there is no off season. I just happen to deal with a bunch of different sports that have no off season, so I'm kind of used to it. But there are peaks and valleys in dance years, right? You know, so it's having somebody that understands that, and having somebody that understands that for specific studios, for the professional, for the competitive dancer. It's important. So it's not just a straight and narrow answer, unfortunately, but I probably wouldn't be doing that to especially developing dancers back to back. Now, if you're talking about a professional that is going to be, you know, that hasn't been doing a ton, maybe he's just been going to class, you know, twice a day for the last couple of months, and then they book a tour, and you're talking about going to tour rehearsals, that's a very different type of question. You know, you have a fully developed body, somebody that's a professional level athlete that should be pushed to these levels at that point, but then you don't want to just jump them right into that. You want to ramp them up to that type of schedule, but having them do very highly fatigued days, because they're going to be on the road where they're highly fatigued, and they need to know how their body's going to respond. So it's not the same answer for everybody, but there are rights and wrongs.
Thank you. And I know that there's like no straight, you know, one answer. It shifts for it. So thanks for giving us that. And everyone, I have one more question before we wrap this up. As we're in a time of a lot of Zoom classes and online classes, and I imagine classes won't always be back to back, do you have recommendations when you have like 30 minutes between classes or 2 hours? Are you doing the same warm up to get yourself ready each time, or is it shortened after that first burst?
So like we've kind of talked about, it's, you know, if your class style is going to change, maybe the warm up style should change a little bit. If you have something that, if you're going to be doing a class that doesn't require a ton of range of motion, But it's going to be very high impact. Then, your warm up should be focused on things like, jump decelerations and things like that. Maybe not with a lot of jumping, but with a lot of slow kind of single leg, double leg, squatting type motions in different planes.
And should you, sorry to cut you off, meaning should you do like that 10+ minute warm up every time you've taken a break between
classes? If you've got 2 hours between, yeah.
Okay.
I would say, go through another 10-minute warm up before you go in. If you've got 30 minutes between classes, 3 to 4 minutes just to kind of get yourself back in the groove. Your body temperature hasn't dropped all the way down. You should try, if you have 30 minutes, you should try to just be moving a little bit between classes. So everything just doesn't just shut off. You kind of know that feeling. Most experienced dancers are going to know that feeling, and experienced athletes, they're going to know, like, I know, like, in 20 minutes of just sitting there and drinking water, like, I get up and I'm stiff again, right? You feel stiffer because you've been really warm and really loose. Try not to let yourself get to that point. Try to, pick a couple emotions that are going to keep you loose. Move softly, move slowly, but be moving, try to keep moving if you have a half hour. If you've got 2 hours, that's a little bit different. Like, give yourself some time off, give yourself some recovery, and then warm yourself up again. You'll benefit from that recovery.
Thank you. So everyone, we are at time. I could ask a million more questions. Be sure to check out sugarfoottherapy.com. And also, I know you have 2 teacher trainings before the end of the year. I looked it up. So you have one coming up next weekend and then one in October.
I think it's the 20, or is it the 24th? Am I making that up? I could be wrong.
It'll be on the website. And then we want to know, for Doctors for Dancers, you could, bear with us for 1 minute. We love feedback. So if you want to privately message or email contact@doctorsfordancers.com to get feedback. We want to know what are future topics that you're interested in as we continue doing these Zooms. If you try out the warm up, please, and then be sure to tag us, tag Sugarfoot Therapy Doctors for Dancers. Let us know how it went. And then one more thing, share this information with your teachers, dancers, parents, studio owners. I know I've taken so many dance classes where we do not get warmed up at all. Usually maybe it's 5 minutes if we do. And it's easy to complain about it sometimes, a little bit harder to find the solution, but here it is. So please, everyone, keep in touch. And thank you again, Chuck, Sienna, who had to run, and Dr. Nick Kutri and Katie. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, guys.
And yeah, please do try the warm up. We really wanted to just create a free resource, and hope that everyone can really take it and use it. So
yes, and Danielle, I'm seeing, how can we find the video? There's a link in here, and then thank you, Doctors for Dancers, put that in. Yeah, everyone, warm up is so important, and I feel the difference when I do it, and I feel the difference when I don't. And we want to have longevity here, right? And also to dance as best as we can. So I'm just gonna let this wrap up. I love this dance. Oh wow, do we have someone from Nigeria here? I'm looking at, I'm like, wow. Oh yes, oh my gosh, welcome. Yeah, everyone share. I mean, I know that we had about 40 people today, 50 people, but this can be 50,000 people if you share. Social media is very, very powerful. And I wonder if, it might be that people still don't understand the importance of it. Well, everyone here, you're here for a reason. So yes, please keep sharing. So thank you. I'm just going to awkwardly sit here and kind of look at the chat comments, and then we'll close it out in 2 minutes.
We'll stick around too if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
Oh, Ecuador. Awesome. Look at this. Look at this dance, connecting people from everywhere. Right? It's beautiful. I don't know, in other places, it's sad. LA has had major studios shutting down, and something, are we open to a live video? Contacted Doctors for Dancers and also Sugarfoot Therapy. Oh, and Chuck, do you want to say any closing words? You're on
Kind of
mute.
loud in my studio. Yeah, I just wanted to go somewhere where it's a little bit more quiet because I have rentals going on while I'm over here, so it's kind of loud out there. No, I just wanted to say thank you because I know that doing the warm up that you guys have put together, that one day that we did the video was amazing for me, and I definitely felt the difference. Yeah, I do warm ups. I don't. It's not as detailed as yours, and I felt a difference, and it didn't even feel like it was much longer than mine. So the time doesn't really matter. What matters is how you do it, and that you hit all those major points. And I was sweating like crazy. I said, okay, either I'm out of shape or this is really intense. But either way, like you said, Galit, I know the difference when I don't warm up, and I know the difference when I do. And now I'm doing this concept video that's requiring me to dance every single day, 4 to 5 hours a day. And it's killing me. So now I'm doing all these stretches. I'm not stretching before, stretching after. So thank you, because of you, I am stretching for real.
Good. Thanks, Chuck.
That's so awesome. Oh my gosh. Chuck, one of my favorite people in the world.
You're so sweet, Galit. You know I love you to death.
Oh, Molly, I love that, incorporating it. Yeah, I always wonder if this, make sure to tag Doctors for Dancers in the videos if you do the warm-ups.
And Sugarfoot Therapy.
And Sugarfoot Therapy. Yes. Seriously. Oh my goodness. And then you too. I want you on DanceSpeak. When can I get you on the podcast?
Shoot me a note.
Okay.
Yeah.
Done. I mean it. All right. We're going to close out, everyone. Have a beautiful evening, morning, afternoon. I acknowledge you on behalf of Doctors for Dancers for showing up for the community, showing up for yourselves. Remember that dance, it starts with our bodies. Before there's any industry, before there's any studio, all of it, it starts with our bodies and the way that we take care of ourselves and the way we connect to the artistry. So remember, you are so powerful. Without you, we don't have any of this. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.